across the Bahamas demonstrated in Rawson
in the country, and I then made a decision. I stand by that decision.
And dozens of people from 20 organizations across the Bahamas demonstrated in Rawson Square this morning, demanding that government enact a Freedom of Information Act. Also at that protest was F&M leader Dr. Hubert Minnis, who explained why it was not enacted under the Ingram administration in 2012, adding that it's now on the party's agenda. Jasmine Brown reports.
Dozens of supporters headed to Rawson Square this morning, where they carried placards and chanted, hoping to have their voices heard by government officials as they entered the House of Assembly.
Morning's protest was the brainchild of the Save the Bays organization. Environmental activist and Bahamas waterkeeper Joseph Darville says as a modern democracy, the people of the Bahamas should know what the government is doing. He says that can only be possible through the transparency provided by a Freedom of Information Act.
We're agitating for a Freedom of Information Act, which is the fundamental plank in any modern democracy. And it's reprehensible, shameful that a modern democracy, so-called, in the Bahamas, still doesn't have that particular act in place. We're supposed to be one of the leading nations in the Caribbean area, but yet many of them have a Freedom of Information Act in place today, and yet the Bahamas has none.
Representatives from groups including the Chamber of Commerce, BPSU, Bahamas Against Crime, Save the Bays, Coalition to Save Clifton, Bahamas National Citizens Coalition, DNA, and the F&M all spoke out in support of Bahamians being able to access information.
I'm of the opinion that our government is out of touch. You understand? It seems to be like our operating in a vacuum. They're operating in a bubble, and we're saying, take a time out, listen to the people, hear what we have to say.
An enactment of the Freedom of Information Act would cause it to be not so laborious and tedious in seeking even to get an acknowledgement from letters from our Prime Minister. And this is why we are out here fighting today, because we know firsthand the negativity because of not having it.
Too much of the people's business is being conducted in secrecy. We need more government in the sunshine, where the people need to have access to information which reveals what is going on with their business. And so we are calling upon the government and all political organizations to ensure that the passage and enactment of this act is one of their principal priorities. Because without that, even the press cannot properly serve the public because they do not have access to information.
Back in March, while speaking at University College's anti-corruption conference in the Cayman Islands, Prime Minister Perry Christie boasted that his government may introduce new legislation before the end of the year to create an integrity commission that would, among other things, oversee the process of public financial declarations. Christie also noted his government will give renewed consideration to the draft Freedom of Information Act to allow citizens greater access to government information. A revamped version of that bill passed the Senate in 2012, but government has yet to announce an implementation date. In 2012, the former administration brought to Parliament a Freedom of Information bill, which was debated and passed. F&M leader Dr. Hubert Minnis says no government should be operating behind closed doors, and added that the act was never signed by former Prime Minister Hubert Ingram.
Just a matter of Prime Minister signing it, bringing in a particular date. It was debated, but you're now looking at a new leader, and I am for change. And once you're talking about change, there's always resistance to change. But I am definitely enhancing and will enforce the principles and the policies, the foundations of the F&M. We were built on transparency. We were built on honesty. We were built on accountability and integrity. I will ensure that those come about.
DNA leader Granville McCartney is now asking this administration to keep its promise and enact legislation. But McCartney said the existing bill needs strengthening.
The Bahamian people ought to know everything that's going on. And just from the attitude of this administration, the arrogance of this administration, keeping the information from the Bahamian public, I don't feel that they will have the best interests of the Bahamian people at heart, even if they do implement a Freedom of Information Act. So we need to make sure that it has teeth, that we, you, and all of the Bahamian people are in a position to know what's going on in this country.
Protesters also signed a petition that they plan to forward to Prime Minister Christie. Reporting for NB12 News, I'm Jasmine Brown.
On the heels of Prime Minister Christie's claim that the Ingram administration decisively and unequivocally blocked competition in the cellular market until April 2014, the